singing in between notes with glissando and resistance while playing is cool to develop this skill as well, even though it seems unnecessary as all the keys are already with different articulations, different musical characters for different elements of form. Joy. Beginning. Development. Intonation also gives why we need resistance and intonation. Adding resistance to glissando singing is necessary to control the finger muscles of the palm in slow as well as in fast tempos. The energy
Да, вам не послышалось, мы даем заказы. Скорее всего, вы сейчас выбираете профессию, которую хотите освоить и дополнительно.
Tonight, new records and alarming new concerns about the pandemic. After countless Thanksgiving gatherings, new fears that it will get even worse before Christmas. With the most Americans now hospitalized since it all began, more medical centers overwhelmed, and getting tested becomes a bigger challenge. In a growing number of cities, it's looking like the early days of the pandemic. Black Friday shattering records with a whole new way of shopping and shipping, how to get those gifts to your loved ones for free and on time. Iran's top nuclear scientist killed. Was Israel behind the brazen attack on the man considered the driving force behind Iran's nuclear weapons program? The major league defeat for President Trump and the possible signs of acceptance from him that he lost the election, now even referring to a Biden administration. Our NBC News investigation, new record COVID outbreaks in nursing homes. What's fueling the surge? Are they more prepared now than in the spring? And will Santa and all the presents make it this year? Dr. Fauci weighs in for all those kids, big and small, who are wondering.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening. As public health officials brace for the echo of COVID infections they worry will follow a boom in holiday travel, the nation's hospitals could hardly be more vulnerable. Tonight, hospitalizations from the current wave of COVID cases are setting new records. ICUs finding whatever spaces they can to handle the spillover of very sick patients. And now, as millions get ready to travel home from Thanksgiving, hospitals fear what could be about to come at them. We start our reporting with Miguel Almaguer.
Finding no relief during the holiday, hospitalizations on Thanksgiving hit a record high for the 17th straight day, with more states turning to field hospitals. In Wisconsin, some medical centers are rolling out beds into lobbies and parking garages. By next week, nearly a quarter of all hospitals could face a staffing shortage.
A lot of people ask what they can do for us healthcare workers during this time, and I think that's the most important thing that people can do is just show your respect by wearing your mask.
Even before a record number of Americans traveled this week, cities like Phoenix, Miami, and Baltimore were seeing a resurgence in cases. In LA County, daily infections have quadrupled while deaths have tripled. COVID cases nationwide are up 10%, but the CDC says the real infection rate could be 8 times higher.
As the nation urgently awaits a new vaccine, Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles could soon receive some of the first doses, perhaps from Pfizer, under tight security.
Hundreds of thousands of doses could be stored in these state-of-the-art ultra-cold freezers, but distribution may become a problem.
The biggest challenge is that the vaccines are becoming available right at the time that we're experiencing another surge. So the nurses who commonly would be the ones to administer the vaccine are needed at the bedside to care for COVID patients as well as non-COVID patients.
Okay, right here.
The desperate need for nurses is why Iris Maida came back to work after retiring in January.
She wanted to train other frontline workers to help in this crisis.
But her daughter says she lost her life trying to save others.
To see this amazing, vivacious woman willing to put her life on the line to help others so that they could then help others. To see her languishing there, it was such a tragedy.
A tragedy that is far from over. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
This is Gabe Gutierrez. From Los Angeles to Chicago to Dallas, the COVID testing lines this week have been growing.
I mean, we were seeing about maybe 150, 200 people a day. Now we're seeing upwards and topping and over 500 right now.
114 Americans are testing positive every minute. In New York City, a pre-Thanksgiving rush gave way to a steady stream today.
I think it's important to get tested, even if you aren't showing symptoms.
Still, the country's largest nursing union says a survey of 15,000 nurses shows 2/3 have never been tested. This despite major sports leagues conducting thousands of COVID tests a week for their athletes.
It is absolutely outrageous that national sports stars are getting routinely tested when nurses aren't. Nurses are your line of defense. They're your only line of defense.
At Texas A&M University, researchers are working on a COVID-19 breathalyzer. In less than a minute, results could potentially be sent to someone's smartphone, though it still would require emergency use authorization from the FDA. 9 months into the pandemic, some states are still reporting a testing backlog as labs are overwhelmed. In North Dakota, results are taking 5 to 7 days.
It makes it very difficult because people are wondering if they should stay at home or if they are okay to go to work.
But is getting tested even enough? A question being asked by families across the country as the holiday season is just beginning.
testing should be reserved for what you want to test for. If you are sick, if you're worried that you could expose others, but it only gives you that snapshot in that one moment in time. So unfortunately, a negative test does not give you the all clear.
And Gabe joins us now from New York, where the governor says he's considering a winter plan that will likely include more testing in schools.
Yeah, Lester, it's not exactly clear how that will work at this point. The mayor here faced backlash for closing schools, but the governor now says increased testing inside classrooms will be crucial to reopening them this week. Lester.
All right, Gabe, thanks very much. Dr. John.
Специалисты компании Love Piano уже на связи и готовы вам помочь. Мы занимаемся только клавишными музыкальными инструментами и доставляем их по всей России. Цифровые и акустические пианино, рояли и синтезаторы. Со всем ассортиментом вы можете ознакомиться у нас на сайте. Звоните, и мы с радостью вас проконсультируем и поможем с выбором.
Dr. John Torres joins us now to clear up some misconceptions about testing, especially in light of all the travel and family gatherings. Dr. John, how much should people be relying on these tests?
Lester, we all need to realize that these tests are essentially just that. They're a snapshot in time. So if you're negative today, that doesn't mean you won't be positive tomorrow. For example, you could be exposed today, test negative in 5 days. Then on day 8, you hang out with friends and family thinking you're fine, only to develop symptoms and test positive on day 10. So you expose all those others without knowing you're contagious. And that's why it's important to realize that testing is just one of the steps, along with quarantining, avoiding crowds, wearing a mask, and social distancing, that can help make sure you don't have the virus or spread it to others. Lester?
Yeah, an important reality check. All right, Dr. John, thanks. And on Sunday, be sure to watch and Meet the Press. Dr. Anthony Fauci will discuss the pandemic with Chuck Todd. Now to Black Friday, shattering online shopping records today. Tonight, what you can do for free shipping and deep discounts. Jolene Kent has details.
It may have looked like an unusually slow start to Black Friday, but online, Americans are shopping and shattering records.
I could sit in front of my machine and hit 5 stores at the same time.
On Thanksgiving Day alone, online shopping soared more than 20% to a record $5.1 billion, giving Black Friday a dramatic new look, now on pace to be the biggest ever online.
Usually on Black Friday, these big TVs would be scooped up by in-person shoppers. This year, this Best Buy says a lot of these are already spoken for by online shoppers.
For the millions getting orders shipped, there's added pressure to click buy as soon as possible, thanks to backlogged orders.
Retailers' distribution centers are experiencing a significant increase in workload, coupled with some of the restrictions that COVID's in place around social distancing and use of PPE. Waiting until the last minute this year is just going to result in disappointment.
That's why Amazon has hired nearly 500,000 new workers this year alone.
To compete with Amazon, Best Buy and many other retailers are transforming their stores into mini fulfillment centers. Come this way with me. They take your online order and then they fulfill it from locations in your neighborhood.
If you choose to ship, experts say December 11th is expected to be the last day for free or cheaper shipping in time for Christmas. After that, you'll pay more to get your stuff on time.
To avoid shipping risks entirely, one thing you can do is buy online and then pick up at the store. But this holiday season, you're going to want to be patient with that, too. It's a lot of people doing the same thing. Lester?
Jolene Kent tonight, thank you. Overseas, Iran is vowing revenge and blaming Israel tonight after its top nuclear scientist was killed in a brazen attack. Bill Neely has late details for us.
A bullet-ridden car, a drive-by assassination near Tehran, says Iran, of a man American and Israeli intelligence accuse of being the architect of Iran's nuclear program. Iranian state media tonight naming Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, vowing revenge. Iran's foreign minister blaming Israel for what he called an act of state terror.
Iran's secret nuclear files.
Israel's leader singled out Fakhrizadeh 2 years ago.
Remember that name, Fakhrizadeh.
Israel convinced of his key role.
He was the brain and the organizational commander of the secret part of the Iranian nuclear project. He was in charge, but the goal is to have a nuclear weapon.
For years, many nuclear scientists have been killed in Iran. Israel suspected. President Trump today retweeting news of the killing. The CIA and Israel not commenting. President Trump has confronted Iran in the past. President-elect Biden favors talks to restart the Iran nuclear deal. If confirmed, this attack could be Israel's preemptive strike. Its proxy war with Iran growing tonight. Earlier this year, America killed Iran's top Revolutionary Guard commander. Tonight, Iran's army chief blamed America. Proxy war with Iran growing tonight. Earlier this year, America killed Iran's top Revolutionary Guard commander. Tonight, Iran's army chief blamed America and Israel for today's killing. Tensions and the stakes are escalating. Lester?
All right, Bill Neely, thanks. Another legal setback tonight for President Trump's claims of voter fraud. A federal appeals court rejecting his challenge in Pennsylvania. Pete Williams is here now. Pete, what did the court say?
It's a unanimous ruling, Lester, by a panel of 3 appeals court judges, all Republican appointees, one appointed by President Trump. The court said the campaign failed to offer any solid evidence that Pennsylvania election officials changed the rules to favor Biden. The ruling said calling an election unfair does not make it so. Charges require specific allegations and then proof. We have neither here. Changed the rules to favor Biden. The ruling said calling an election unfair does not make it so. Charges require specific allegations and then proof. We have neither here, it said. It concluded by saying voters, not lawyers, choose the president. The campaign will undoubtedly appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, Lester.
All right, Pete Williams in Washington, thank you. Despite the mounting legal defeats, President Trump still refuses to concede, but tonight the clearest signs yet he is moving toward the inevitable. Kelly O'Donnell at the White House.
From his Virginia Gulf property, President Trump headed to the seclusion of Camp David today. His election transition becoming defiant acceptance.
Just so you, certainly I will. Certainly I will. And you know that.
Last night, making his first public commitment to move out of the White House after a Biden victory is finalized.
Because time isn't on our side.
Reality setting in to a point.
It's going to be a very hard thing to concede because we know there was massive fraud.
As the president played golf today, those unproven election claims suffered another court defeat. Still, he is more outwardly recognizing Biden will succeed him.
The Biden administration said, oh, that's okay, we'll get rid of America first. No, we don't want to get rid of America first. Don't let Joe Biden take credit for the vaccines. Don't let him take credit for the vaccines, because the vaccines were me.
Today, outside the White House, workers build the inaugural parade stand for President-elect Joe Biden, who made no comment today. Whether President Trump attends, still a question.
I mean, I know the answer. I'll be honest, I know the answer, but I just don't want to say it yet.
Today, President Trump urged his own supporters to drop plans for a boycott of Georgia's runoff races. He'll campaign there in Georgia next week to help 2 Republican senators trying to keep their seats and party control. Lester?
Kelly O'Donnell, thank you.
Как за 7 дней создать микробизнес и продать его за 1 миллион рублей? Как, имея бизнес с доходом.
In Southern California, power has been cut to 16,000 utility customers to prevent high winds from sparking new and potentially deadly wildfires. The Santa Ana winds combined with extremely dry conditions, making it dangerous for millions. Now to the mystery after a nationwide spree of destruction aimed at statues of historical figures like George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. Tonight, who might have done it and why? Blaine Alexander reports.
In Spokane, Washington, it was a statue of President Lincoln splashed with red paint. In Portland, a cemetery dedicated to veterans of America's 19th century wars tagged with graffiti. A toppled George Washington statue in Minneapolis. And in Chicago, this statue at McKinley Park.
Looks like somebody put cables around it to try to pull the statue down.
All historic monuments, and during this Thanksgiving weekend, all targeted by vandals. On many, a similar message: anti-colonialism graffiti, no more genocide, and the words "land back," an apparent reference to a campaign focused on returning American land to indigenous peoples. So far in Portland, 3 arrests for defacing a grocery store, all of it reminiscent of similar backlash against Confederate statues in recent years.
The message that people are trying to deliver is that they want to see a change in the system of white supremacy that is characterized by these public monuments and memorials that speak to a very painful past.
Across the country, police are still searching for those responsible. Blaine Alexander, NBC News.
In just 60 seconds, are nursing homes better prepared now than at the start of the pandemic? Our investigation coming up next. Now to our NBC News investigation, finding a record number of new COVID outbreaks at America's nursing homes, with community spread fueling another surge. Here's Kate Snow.
Families visiting loved ones at Jewish senior services in Bridgeport, Connecticut have to meet in a tent. Last spring, when COVID first hit, CEO Andrew Banoff says they were much less prepared. 22 residents died.
I cried myself to sleep at night, recognizing that we didn't have the tools to care for people that we are here to serve and care for. So it was very difficult.
What were you lacking then?
Most importantly, it was knowledge.
Now there are guidelines. They've stockpiled PPE. Staff and residents are tested weekly. But COVID is raging back. They lost 2 residents last Friday.
So in many ways, it's exactly the same. We still have the fear. We still have the uncertainty. We still don't have a vaccine.
With more than 20 staff infected now, nurses who are well are covering.
I see the people who live here more hours a day than I do my family at home. They are our family also, and it's hard.
Nursing homes across the country are still reporting
they are our
vaccine.
With more than 20 staff infected now, nurses who are well are covering.
I see the people who live here more hours a day than I do my family at home. They are our family also, and it's hard.
Nursing homes across the country are still reporting shortages. A review of federal data by NBC News shows 1 in 10 facilities said they did not have a week's supply of N95 masks. Nearly a third of all nursing homes said they had to wait 3 to 7 days to receive COVID-19 test results.
We still lack rapid turnaround testing in most U.S. nursing homes. That needs to change.
More than 1,300 nursing homes across the country had 3 or more COVID cases, the highest number ever reported in a single week. Midwestern states are particularly hard hit. In Iowa alone, there are 3 or more cases in 56 facilities.
We are in the middle of it here at Friendship Haven.
2 hours from Des Moines in the small city of Fort Dodge, CEO Julie Thorson is angry and frustrated people are not wearing masks. Community spread, fueling more cases than they've ever seen.
I actually have people say, well, if your employees wouldn't bring it in, we're not the villains. We're not the ones that, aren't doing what we're supposed to do. The community needs to step up now.
It's why she and her staff keep posting pleas.
So from us to you,
to protect the most vulnerable. Kate Snow, NBC News, Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Just ahead, nothing stops Santa. Dr. Fauci's message to kids about St. Nick next. Finally, good news for all the kids out there. Dr. Fauci says Santa can't get or spread COVID. As Cynthia McFadden reports, all he'll be bringing is joy.
How are you, Santa? Hey, Santa, you're still coming, right? Santa.
Which got us to thinking. 'Twas a month before Christmas, well, minus 2 days. Would COVID this year drive Christmas away? Would Santa stay put at the North Pole this year? Would presents get stuck there? And how about the deer? But the nation's top doctor had good news for us all. Santa and reindeer would not have to stall. According to Fauci, Santa's immune. Santa is coming. And I don't mean on Zoom. It's been a tough year, the doctor then said, but canceling Christmas, there's no need to dread. Unlike the bad virus that spreads through the air, the spirit of Christmas will always be there. In the eyes of your parents and big sisters too, in the work of the people who show up to do the things that need doing. Of the people who show up to do the things that need doing.
no matter the cost. Without them, this year would surely be lost. It may be a bit different than it's been in the past, and yes, it's important to keep wearing that mask, but be patient, says Fauci, and be of good cheer. Christmas is coming. We need it this year.
It's Santa! We're waiting for Santa to come!
Aren't we all?
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
Cynthia McFadden, NBC News.
Some things we can always count on. That's nightly news for this Friday. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night. Hey, NBC News viewers. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.
Смотрите. Дерево посадил, дом построил.
Dear fellow scholars, this is 2-Minute Papers with Károly Zsolnai Fehér. Today we're going to talk a bit about the glory and the woes of cloth simulation programs. In these simulations, we have several 3D models that are built from up to several hundreds of thousands of triangles. And as they move in time, the interesting part of the simulation is whenever collisions happen. However, evaluating how these meshes collide is quite difficult and time-consuming. Basically, we have to tell an algorithm that we have a piece of cloth with 100,000 connected triangles here and another one there, and now have a look and tell me which collides with which and how they bend and change in response to these forces. And don't forget about friction and repulsive forces. Also, please be accurate because every small error adds up over time, and do it several times a second so we can have a look at the results interactively. Well, this is a quite challenging problem, and it takes quite long to compute, so much so that 70 to 80% of the total time taken to perform the simulation is spent with collision handling. So, how can we make it not take forever? Well, one way would be to try to make sure that we can run this collision handling step on the graphics card. This is exactly what this work does, and in order to do this, we have to make sure that all of these evaluations can be performed in parallel. Of course, this is easier said than done. Another difficulty is choosing the appropriate time steps. These simulations are run in a way that we check and resolve all of the collisions, and then we can advance the simulation forward by a tiny amount. This amount is called a time step, and choosing the appropriate time step has always been a challenge. You see, if we set it to too large, we will be done faster and compute. Well, this is a quite challenging problem, and it takes quite long to compute, so much so that 70 to 80% of the total time taken to perform the simulation is spent with collision handling. So, how can we make it not take forever? Well, one way would be to try to make sure that we can run this collision handling step on the graphics card. This is exactly what this work does, and in order to do this, we have to make sure that all of these evaluations can be performed in parallel. Of course, this is easier said than done. Another difficulty is choosing the appropriate time steps. These simulations are run in a way that we check and resolve all of the collisions, and then we can advance the simulation forward by a tiny amount. This amount is called a time step, and choosing the appropriate time step has always been a challenge. You see, if we set it to too large, we will be done faster and compute less. However, we will almost certainly miss some collisions because we skipped over them. The simulation may end up in a state that is so incorrect that it is impossible to recover from, and we have to throw the entire thing out. If we set it to too low, we get a more robust simulation. However, it will take many hours to days to compute. To remedy this, this technique is built in a way such that we can use larger time steps. That's excellent news. Also, the collision computation larger times. To remedy this, this technique is built in a way such that we can use larger time steps. That's excellent news. Also, the collision computation part is now up to 9 times faster, and if we look at the cloth simulation as a whole, that can be made over 3 times faster. As you see here, this is especially nice because we can test how these garments react to our manipulations at 8 to 10 frames per second. If you have a closer look at the paper, you will find another key observation which states that most of the time only a small subregion of the simulated cloth undergoes deformation due to response forces, and this knowledge can be kept track of, which contributed to cutting down the simulation time significantly. Thanks for watching and for your generous support, and I'll see you next time. We can test how these garments react to our manipulations at 8 to 10 frames per second. If you have a closer look at the paper, you will find another key observation which states that most of the time only a small subregion of the simulated cloth undergoes deformation due to response forces, and this knowledge can be kept track of, which contributed to cutting down the simulation time significantly. Thanks for watching and for your generous support, and I'll see you next time.
Команда ВТБ. Можете на нас рассчитывать. Виктор отлично разбирается в кулинарных традициях, а вот с технологией не его конек.
Hey everyone, this is Josh with Josh Wright Piano TV. Today's episode has to do with the importance of recording yourself when you play and practice. I remember when I was a young kid, I bought this really, to me it was very expensive, it was a couple $100, and I had saved up allowances and all this stuff for this recording equipment. And it used like cassette tapes and things like that, but it was a pretty nice setup. And I thought that was the greatest thing. I valued that so much. And to this day, I still value like this microphone and the interface that I'm recording on. Like those are some of my most prized possessions because it really does help you become a much better pianist. And I don't think any of us do it enough. I know for me, I always think, oh, I got to get the piece better before I start recording myself. Don't think that way. Start recording today. It gives you instantaneous feedback, and it's usually extremely discouraging to record because you think you sound better than you actually do. And that's true of every single one of us. I know that, one of my idols, a person I admire more than anyone is in the piano field is Sergei Babayan, and he himself has told me, like, oh, I don't like to be recorded because it is so much pressure. But just get in the routine of recording yourself daily even. I remember when I was 12 to 14 is when I got that equipment when I was 12. And I think I spent half of my recording sessions listening to myself, listening back. I was playing things like Gaspard de la Nuit by Ravel, which you might think, oh, what idiot teacher would give you Gaspard when you're that young? And my teacher was so smart. Her name's Susan Dormeyer. She gave me those things so that by the time I was 17 and 18, I was winning competitions with those pieces. You got to start young, but it was so critical that I was listening to my sound every day so that when I started playing, you could get that quivering figure in the right hand. You can listen for warmth of sound. You should be listening for balance. You should be listening for clear pedals, articulation. All these things are so important. And you have to be your own best teacher. Stop relying on your teacher to fix your mistakes. This is something that I teach my own students. I always tell them, quoting Heinrich Neuhaus, I want to get rid of, not word for word, but I want to get rid of you guys as soon as possible. Now, it's going to take me a while to get rid of you because I want you to know everything I know. But that was not Neuhaus's philosophy. Some teachers just hold on to students forever, even beyond their capabilities, especially these neighborhood teachers that, you know, they know how to play a few church hymns and then they think they're qualified to be a piano teacher. It's just absolutely despicable that they hold on to students so long. I don't mind at all them starting a student out and teaching them good basics, but it's so important to not rely solely on your teacher. You listen to your teacher, you do everything they say, you try everything out, but then you go home and you do the work and you diagnose, you're the doctor, you're fixing your own issues, and then your teacher enhances things that you may not have thought of. A great example of this is my student Michelle. She lives in Alabama. I teach her on Skype, and one thing that we have been going over, she's been doing great work on this Rachmaninoff Prelude in G major, Opus 32, number 5. And one thing that we have discussed for the last month and a half or 2 months is get that left hand softer. And each lesson she got a little bit better. And I said, you really need to start recording yourself. And so she did. She's a very diligent student. She does exactly what I ask her to. And she came back today and it sounded very much like what I just played. Before it was... Now, I understand different pianos are of different qualities. This is a Hamburg Steinway, has a great soft register, just amazing to the touch. I think it's a 1978, but basically all original parts. The person who owned it before, I think they barely ever used it, which is great for me. But it's so important to do that because she said, oh my gosh, like I couldn't hear that I was playing that loud. She said, I thought, oh, my left hand's so beautiful and silky and soft. And then I'd listen back and it sounded like I was pounding it. So then I went back, this is her speaking, and she said, I went back and I played it as if I wasn't even pressing the keys anymore. It felt like I wasn't even playing them. And all of a sudden, sorry. She got that sound. And one thing that all of my teachers have stressed, especially Babayan, was get soft at the ends of your phrases. But Babayan reached greater heights than I really ever experienced so far as demands on yourself. He would say, I want it to completely evaporate to the point where you can barely even hear it, but it was still well balanced. It was still a rich tone. So for instance, one thing you could do is that the silkiest, smoothest texture you could create? Maybe you just do that over and over. Then keep going. I didn't like my G at the bottom. Searching is a quest. If you are practicing and you're like, oh, I just got to do this a bunch of times, the repetition to get it into my hands, there is some validity to that when you're first learning it, but once you've got it in your hands, you do not just sit and do mindless repetitions. Search for things, record, listen back. If you're spending half of your time listening to yourself playing, I guarantee you will increase in skill by more than the 50% time. You'll increase, 200, 300, 400% more if you're listening to half of your recording or your practice session than just playing. Now, there are passages that are just high maintenance passages that you've just got to work out. And I will be hitting that in my Opus 10 number 2 video, pro practice video, which I've been working towards for quite some time, but because I totally suck at that piece and I'm going to try to finish all the Chopin etudes by this year's end. But I hope today just shed some light on how important recording is. Go out. One thing, I will link this in the comments section below. This is like $100 or $120 on Amazon. I really don't think you can beat quality. This is a Yeti Silver Edition microphone by Blue. That's the company. I'll link it down below with an Amazon link if you want to order that. This is an AKG 414 microphone, and this is about $900, and this is like $100. And for practice sessions, you won't notice much difference between the two. These I use for my YouTube videos, but I also use them to like record my professional albums. So I figure why not use them for YouTube as well. But you'll get a great sound out of the Yeti as well. So if any of you have any questions, my email is josh@joshwrightpiano.com. Thanks for joining me today. Good luck in recording your practice sessions. See you later.
Gig, you get to the end of a tune and you go, now what do I do? How do I end this thing? And the bass player will be looking over at us, because a lot of times, even if we're not the leader of the band, we're sort of looked at as the de facto commander. They want us to sort of steer the boat harmonically and arrangement wise. So it kind of falls on the piano player more often than not to come up with endings and intros. There are quite a few sort of standard endings that people do, and I'll show you some of those. You've probably heard a lot of them, or they'll sound very familiar. There's also a couple of really cool and unique endings that I like that I'll teach you, and there'd be kind of a nice thing to have.
Иван Семенович, расскажите, пожалуйста, о том состоянии, что вы помните о том состоянии, в котором вы попали к нам в клинику?
Накануне я выпил, так сказать, много, лишнюю дозу. На следующий день я выпил меньшую дозу. Так успокоился, решил отдохнуть, спать лечь. Лег спать. Подошли трое. Толкают меня. Вставай. Я встал, свет включил, никого нет. Смотрю, крысы. Мне было очень страшно. Я их испугался. Ой, что делать с крысами? Страшное дело. Все, ой, зараза.
Острый алкогольный психоз, белая горячка, расстройство сознания, галлюцинации, двигательное возбуждение. Белая горячка купируется инъекциями нейролептиков с одновременным введением сердечных средств. Причина алкогольных психозов – хронический алкоголизм. Хронический алкоголизм – самая распространенная наркомания. Ее лечение складывается из комплекса воспитательных и медицинских мероприятий.
Тебе болит, вас привело к нам. Мне очень хочется бросить пить. Пьете давно? Давно. Руки давно так дрожат? Лет 20. А похмеляетесь давно? Тоже столько. Вы бросьте сигарету. Покажите мне язык. Общее самочувствие тяжело? Работать невозможно. Работать невозможно. Сон как? Плохо. Не спите? Да, очень так. Кратко, 2 часа и все. Аппетит? А у меня вообще не было никогда.
Начало специфического антиалкогольного лечения предшествует тщательное соматическое обследование больного.
Думаю, понимаешь, такая, понимает он тебя уже, да. Сам же. Просто профессия, я как бы, знаешь, просто уже, я понимаю, что все это говно, блин, да. Ну, как вот, ну короче, просто уж, простите за выражение, короче. Ну, что все это, как бы, ну, что, как бы, ни к чему, ни к добру, говорит, ну, ладно, надоело. Да. Просто профессия. Такая же, как все остальные профессии. Ничем. Как бы так все равно де-факто, так оно и есть. Любой один не хуже, не лучше других. Со своими нюансами, понимаешь? Ну, ты так не думаешь, что ли? Тебя не понимает. Ну ладно, какие-то лучшие, ну короче, неважно. Есть лучшие дела какие-то, да. Ну, я понял, это сенсибильное дело. Не, я не говорю, что я там что-то достиг, или что-то умею, понимаю. Я просто говорю, что я, да, еще не факт, что я понимаю, да. А все равно, ну там понимает он за себе это. Терять все равно нечего. Я потому что музыкой занялся. Специально, чтобы не пить, что ли? Нет, не в этом дело. Это вообще никак не коррелирует. Это просто у нас вся семья помешана на алкоголе. Ну да. Ну, никто не признается в этом, ну, как бы, да. Ну да, как бы, типа того. Ну, как бы, бытовое пьянство, типа того. Ну начало алкоголизма, наверное. Или как это называется. Неважно. Ну, как бы пили много, изрядно, постоянно. Раз в неделю этого недостаточно было, да. 2-3 раза в неделю где-то так. И причем прилично. Ну, это ты себе, что ли, говоришь, что ли. Ну, это традиция наша семейная просто. У папы, у мамы, короче, такие. Да, не, бабушки, ну, бабушки разные бывают, это нет, меня не касается. Легкий характер, наверное, легкий неподъем был просто. Меня не касается, я просто тебе говорю, да, что. Поэтому, как бы, вроде ничего особенного, да, но, да. Ну, нет, ну, наверное, мне на это плевать, я тебе просто говорю, что мне самому не нравится, что я ну, почему это так, это никто не зациклен, мать моя зациклена на этой теме, потому что я с ней вырос, смотрим, когда-то давно было, не важно, приехали. То есть дело даже не в этом, но это как бы показатель, что ты не пьешь, это как бы реально, да, показатель. очень многих кругах это показатель. И на то есть какие-то основания. Ну, не обязательно даже полностью совсем. У кого нет проблем с алкоголем, они такие, ну, пьешь, так не пьешь, какая нахер разница, да. Да, от слова полностью, то есть, но когда они говорят полностью не пьешь, тогда они такие, блин, что-то тоже, кстати, интересно, да, вот я понял. Но меня не касается. У меня мама тоже не думала, что у меня проблемы с алкоголем. Алкоголь только думал, что у меня проблемы с меня не касается. Наверное, мне, ну, да, не касается, просто так уж. Многие так не думают, просто это обычно, все. Меня не касается, я просто все говорю, да. Ну да, обычная профессия, конечно. Ну да, ну наверное, просто чтобы быть нормальным, просто реальным, ну как бы, ну это уже других, наверное, не касается, да. Ну да, ну обычно социальный, нормально. Просто музыкантом, блин, да, ну,